What's up, y'all? It's your boy Steph, back with another reaction. This time we have Blame It on George. 7 eerily disturbing old cartoons and animations uploaded March 31st, 2018. The description says, today on Blame It on George, we take a look at some old school cartoons and animations that were too creepy for mainstream viewers. And below that, we have featured narrators Dr. Creepin, Blue Lava 6, I believe that's how you pronounce that, and Devontae Johnson. Creepin and Lava 6 both have YouTube links, but Devontae Johnson does not. So in the description, there will be links to Blame It on George, this original video, Dr. Creepin and Lava 6. If I can find a link for Devontae Johnson, it'll be down there in my description. But if not, hey, at least you know I tried. But without further ado, let's get into this.
What is it about old black and white cartoons, animations, and films that are just so unnerving? From the Fleischer cartoons to the classic Walt Disney shorts, there was always something about these classics that just gave off a disturbing vibe. The weird, surreal movement, the muffled voice acting, endless regulation and content control. It just seems like the perfect recipe for, well, fear. So today, we're going back in time to take a look at 7 eerily disturbing old cartoons and animations.
Damn, that was dark. They were squeezing the shit out that orange.
Swing You Sinners, 1930.
Don't sound good.
Our first cartoon is Fleischer Studios' 1913 tour cartoon short, Swing You Sinners, featuring Bimbo the dog. The cartoon starts with Bimbo making his rounds, trying to steal chickens from coops. Unfortunately, the police are also making their rounds and catch him in the act. While running from the cop, Bimbo hides out in a graveyard. The gate then grows a mouth and swallows the key, locking Bimbo inside and sealing his fate.
Oh, wow.
Tombstones, trees, and even the ground itself comes to life all around him.
What?
Attempting to eat him, torture him, and beat him, all while singing a jazzy song about what a horrible person he is. In this jazz number, the ghosts berate and condemn him for the chickens he used to steal, crabs he used to shoot, and girls he used to chase. Eventually, Bimbo hides out in a barn, where this nightmare takes a turn for the worse. Pitchforks and scythes, possessed by demons, harass him and try to cut his throat, while a demonic version of the chicken from earlier appears and spasms uncontrollably towards him.
Damn.
After running outside, the entire barn transforms into a conglomerate of ghostly faces, chasing him all throughout the field. From here on out, it's just bizarre imagery left and right, with a bizarre frog moving its arms around its body in an extremely uncomfortable way, as it stares directly into the viewer's eyes. Finally, Bimbo's head is chopped off, and he is swallowed by a giant skull as it lunges towards the camera, ending the cartoon.
What?
That's it. Earlier in the cartoon, Bimbo pleads with the ghosts, claiming he's made efforts to be a better person. But the ghosts don't care. They cast him into the ghastly pits of hell, where he'll be forever trapped, headless and tormented. Some viewers have noted the similarities the cartoon has to real-life lynch mobs, as the cartoon is centered around a dark-colored character who is chased by a gang intending to kill him over petty crimes. While this is purely theoretical, the similarities are rather eerie, especially given the time period the cartoon was released. The disturbing nature of the cartoon has made its mark in pop culture, from the Serbian alternative rock band Brigand naming their first album after the short, to the in-game achievement for beating the devil in Cuphead being called Swing You Sinner, referencing the dynamic nature of this cartoon.
I'm surprised the barn didn't just keep him in
The
there
Little Pest,
since it was alive.
1931.
You know what I mean?
Is there anything more cruel than taking candy from a baby? How about beating and drowning babies? Because that's a large part of the next cartoon, The Little Pest, distributed by Columbia Pictures in 1931. The short features that character Scrappy, a young boy who appears in cartoons from 1931 to 1941. Scrappy and his dog Yippee are on their way to the fishing hole to spend a summer's afternoon catching fish. Much to his annoyance, his baby brother Oopie tags along, singing songs and being a positive influence. Scrappy repeatedly tells him to get lost, but Oopie wants nothing more than to hang out with his older brother. Scrappy gets more and more aggravated and begins to shove Oopie, and eventually outright smacks him. Despite knocking him several yards back, Oopie catches up to Scrappy and begins to fish alongside him. After their fishing lines get tangled, Scrappy pushes his brother into the water out of anger.
Whoa.
Oopie begins to drown, violently thrashing about in the water, screaming for help. Yippee looks incredibly concerned, but Scrappy pretends he doesn't hear anything and begins to walk away, whistling. A vision of an electric chair flashes through Scrappy's head, causing him to dive in and save his baby brother. Not because he genuinely cares about his sibling, but rather because he's scared of getting caught and blamed for his death. After pulling him onto land, he begins to panic that Oopie isn't breathing. Luckily, he does resuscitate him and saves his life. Oopie then states that he's thirsty, saying, "I want a drink of water." This angers Scrappy for some reason, and he chucks his baby brother right back in the water as the cartoon ends. Scrappy is an absolute piece of shit, and one hell of an abusive brother. It's clear that he has no conscience or any sort of attachment to his brother, highlighted by his motive for rescuing Oopie being to save his own skin. It's uncomfortable that such a violent and abusive character went on to be a media mascot with a massive amount of merchandise in the 30s. Luckily, nobody seems to really remember him these days. That's probably for the best.
He just wants to make sure his ass was covered.
Feline Follies. Despite being a well-known mascot even to this day, did you know Felix the cat has been dead for nearly 100 years? Well, in a way. Felix made his first appearance in the 1919 silent cartoon Feline Follies, where he was actually named Master Tom. The 4-minute short follows Felix as he tries to get laid, and that really is the whole plot.
What?
He meets a female cat and they go spend some time together. However, while that's going on, some mice back at Felix's house take full advantage of the fact that there's no cat around to chase them. They eat all the food in the pantry, drink all the milk, and make an enormous mess. After an afternoon of cat sex, Felix returns home exhausted and falls asleep, too tired to notice the massive mess around him. However, his owner arrives and is horrified to see the mess. She assumes it was Felix and throws the confused cat out of the house, telling him to leave and never return. Felix goes to find his girlfriend now that he's homeless. To his surprise, there's a litter of 17 kittens waiting for him. His kittens.
Damn.
Horrified by this new responsibility of raising a family, Felix runs away as fast as he can, eventually ending up at a gas drilling site. He finds an open pipe and sticks a hose onto it, turns it on, and puts it in his mouth, waiting for the gas to do its job and end his life. The cartoon ends with Felix presumably committing suicide.
What the fuck? Damn.
Peanut Vendor, 1933.
That was for kids?
Released in 1933, The Peanut Vendor might just be the first stop-motion film that freaked kids out.
Deadbeat cat.
And with only a 1.5 minute runtime, that's pretty impressive. The story is, well, there is no story. It features a monkey by the seaside selling peanuts, while singing the song Peanut Vendor by Red Nichols. There really isn't much else to the setup other than that. The disturbing thing about this short comes through the monkey himself and his design and movements. Like most stop-motion films, the movement of the characters is rather unnatural and otherworldly. This isn't always a bad thing, and can sometimes even add charm to the puppet's performances.
Hey, Wallace
This
and
would be
Gromit.
the same for the monkey, except its design is absolutely unnerving. Its eyes are enormous and unblinking, often staring directly into the camera and, by extent, the viewer. Its arms are as long as its entire body, and it just looks wrong when stretched out to their full extent. Our main character then breaks out into a dance number, albeit a very stilted one, and removes its own tail and spins it around his neck before it seamlessly merges back with this body.
Oh, wow.
The music cuts out from time to time, leaving you with a second or two of silence with the thing staring at you, making it feel like an eternity. The film was created by Len Lai, a New Zealand artist who was known for his experimental films and kinetic sculpture. His strange and exotic work was widely admired, and his films and sculptures went on to be featured in galleries all across the world. From the British Film Institute to the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. The monkey itself is currently owned by the New Zealand Film Archive and currently resides there. All in all, The Peanut Vendor is a harmless short film that is still impressive to this day. The monkey, however, is also pretty terrifying to this day.
Minus the face and tail, it's like the monkey version of Slender Man.
The Tale of the Priest and of His Workman Balda, 1930s. Our next entry also qualifies as lost media, as only 4 minutes of this film have been found and restored. The Tale of the Priest and of His Workman Balda is a Soviet feature film that was worked on throughout the 1930s. Work on it began in 1933 with Mikhail Sekhanovsky leading the project, basing enough of the fairy tale of the same name by Alexander Pushkin. Difficulties arose during production, partially thanks to the composer of the film leaving the project after publicly denouncing Sekhanovsky's work in an article. Due to not having a score as well as other production troubles, the film was never completed and was put into storage at the Len Film Archives, where it was almost lost in a fire during World War II. The only surviving footage is from the scene bazaar. The fairy tale itself was about a lazy priest looking for a cheap worker in the bazaar. He meets Balda, a simple-minded fellow who agrees to work for a year with no pay, with the exception that he be allowed to hit the priest on the head 3 times as well as have cooked spelt for food, a common wheat staple food in parts of Europe during the Bronze Age.
Oh, wow.
The priest soon realizes that Balda is an exceptional worker, as well as incredibly strong. He gets worried and soon begins to ask Balda to complete impossible tasks, including gathering fabric from a sea devil. At the end of the story, Balda gives the priest 3 consecutive blows upon the head, causing him to lose his mind. Balda delivers the final line, saying, "You shouldn't have gone rushing off after cheapness." The surviving footage from the film version shows the beginning of the story, with the various shopkeepers of the bazaar off-selling their wares. We see many close-ups of these shopkeepers showcasing their rather creepy designs.
Yeah.
Their limited movement, exaggerated features, and bombastic behavior makes for an uncomfortably long 4 minutes, making it
Bombastic.
feel almost double its runtime. It's safe to assume that the entire film would have been this way if this is how they plan on opening the film. While it's unfortunate that the project was never completed and the remaining footage went missing, not everything about this is a loss. After the death of the film's composer, his wife arranged for one of his students to have the rest of the score for the film completed, which premiered at the Russian Philharmonic Orchestra in 2006.
Cameraman's Revenge, 1912. The Cameraman's Revenge was produced in 1912 by the Korn-Zonkov Company, located in Moscow. It focuses on Mr. and Mrs. Beetle and their failing marriage. The entire film is silent and done with stop motion, featuring actual dead bugs attached to wires, with their limbs sealed with wax. Many people were so amazed and convinced by this effect that they thought the filmmaker, Ladislas Starovich, had trained live bugs to perform. Mr. Beetle has become unhappy with his marriage, finding their love life has become rather boring. One night he heads to the gay Dragonfly nightclub to meet his mistress, a dancer at the club. After beating her boyfriend, Mr. Beetle takes the dancer to a hotel where they have sex. Unknown to Mr. Beetle, though, the dancer's boyfriend is a cameraman who follows them to their hotel and secretly films their affair. Meanwhile, Mrs. Beetle herself is also in the middle of an affair with her artist friend. When Mr. Beetle returns home to find her in the middle of the affair, he throws the artist out in a rage. He forgives her, however, and she remains unaware of his affair.
You did the same thing.
The two go out to see a movie, not knowing that the theater they go to is the very same one that the dancer's boyfriend works at.
Ooh.
After seeing the Beatles arrive, the cameraman enacts his revenge and plays the film of Mr. Beetle having sex with the dancer on the projector for everyone to see, humiliating the couple publicly. Mrs. Beetle begins beating Mr. Beetle over the head with her umbrella. Enraged, Mr. Beetle runs up to the projection room and tackles the cameraman, causing the projector to catch on fire. The couple is arrested and thrown into jail, where they reconcile and spend the night together in the cell. At over a century old, The Cameraman's Revenge is Starovich's most famous film. It combines his two loves, graphic design and entomology, in a wonderful parody of parlor melodramas, which were very popular in Russia at the time. The way that dead insects are utilized is brilliant, if not a bit macabre. The delicate techniques used to carefully move each bug's limb without breaking off is incredibly impressive, especially given the fact that this was made in 1912. It is clearly a film aimed at adults, as many of the themes and jokes would fly over children's heads, as well as most likely frighten them, due to the use of stop-motion bug corpses. The attention to detail, dark humor, and macabre themes make this film an uncomfortable delight.
The Mascot. Our final and longest film is another stop-motion animation titled The Mascot. Clocking in at 25 minutes, it's incredibly impressive that such a long and high-quality stop-motion film was produced in 1933. Created by French filmmaker Ladislas Starwitz, The Mascot was actually one of the first animated feature films ever created, preceding Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Really?
The film is actually incredibly similar to Toy Story, or rather,
Hey.
Toy Story is similar to it. The premise features toys coming to life when humans aren't looking. The main character is a toy dog named Duffy, brought to life by a tear from his owner's mother. This gives Duffy a level of loyalty and sentiment that isn't present in any other of the living inanimate objects that are met throughout the film. Given the fact that it's early stop motion, there is a certain degree of unsettling movement present, a good amount of it actually. The amount of material used in this film is impressive, if not a bit disturbing. From vegetables and broken glass to chicken bones and dead chicks half-born in their shell, Starwitz utilized everything at his disposal.
Damn, what the
Pixar
hell?
was incredibly inspired by this film, showcased in Toy Story and A Bug's Life, with viewing the world from a smaller perspective. While Pixar usually takes a much more lighthearted and whimsical approach to these perspectives, The Mascot is not. For example, in Toy Story 2, there is a scene where the toys travel under an orange traffic cone in order to cross the street. While traffic is a mundane situation for us, we can feel the anxiety and tense atmosphere from their perspective, albeit in a comical fashion. A similar situation occurs in The Mascot, where we can see the dangers of the city from a toy's perspective, but the reality of it is much more present. One moment in particular shows a clown doll having his head amputated by the wheel of a car. It never gets reattached, and we see the rest of the body crumble away. The nature of stop motion, added with the realistic approach to smaller perspective of the world, makes this film deep, precise, and unnerving. Many credit Starwitz as the key figure in the development of stop-motion film, and after seeing The Mascot, it's very clear why. Utilizing the surreal nature of stop-motion to their full potential, he realized the power of stop-motion very early on and paved the way for many future creators, including The Nightmare Before Christmas's Henry Selick.
Hey.
Disturbing isn't always a bad thing.
Oogie boogie.
Sometimes it's the anxiety and fear that truly makes us feel alive.
How happy is the little stone that rambles in the road alone
Wow.
and never cares about careers and
Those were for kids? What?
whose elemental brown of passing universe put on. And independent as the sun associates.
I don't know what that was at the end. But if I had kids back there those days, if I was actually born in that time, my kids wouldn't be watching none of that shit. Oh, that shit is fucked up. Like, That shit is spine chilling. Fucking hell no, dude. I'm still tripping on the cat that killed himself when he had sex with that other cat and she ended up pregnant and had 17 kittens. God damn. I don't even think there were days in between that little transition. I think that he just went over there, hit that, and like fucking 5 minutes, 10 minutes later, he got kicked out by his owner because his owner thought that he made that mess in the kitchen when it was really the mice that did. You know, when the cat's away, the mice will play. And when he went back over there to the female cat's house, trying to get a roof over his head or whatever, he sees all the kittens. He doesn't want them. Apparently, she was just a piece of ass. So he goes to a construction yard and attaches a gas pipe to his mouth and waits for it to kill him. That was the darkest one in this whole video. That's so dark, bro. But I think the second darkest one was the very first one with that dog who went to the cemetery running away from the police officer that caught him trying to steal chickens and presumably eat them, I'm assuming. And he ran to the cemetery, graveyard, whatever y'all want to call it. The gate grew a mouth, devoured the key, and morphed back into the wall like a shapeshifter, if you will. And everything in the cemetery / graveyard started berating him and fucking with him. A little while later, he runs into the barn, and all of those things in there start fucking with him too. And eventually, he gets thrown down a bottomless pit, gets beheaded, and is eaten by a giant skull. One thing that got me though, if the gate to the graveyard ate the key and turned back into a wall, turned into a wall, whatever you want to say, I'm surprised that the barn, because the barn was alive, because it grew stubs or legs or whatever and started chasing the dog. I'm surprised the barn didn't just grow a mouth or like seal the dog in there, trapping him in there and letting whatever the objects inside the barn were get to him. That's what I was thinking. Dude, this is a mind fuck. It definitely had to be. That cat one was the darkest one. The first one was number 2 with the dog in the cemetery. And the third one, I don't know. The third one would probably have to be, definitely has to be the last video we watched with the dog who came to life because of a tear from his owner and the toys coming to life. The little clown toy that was running across the street, but a car was coming, so he had to pretend like he wasn't alive, laid on the ground, and the tire beheaded him and kept going, and you see his body hold still and it started to like fade away. That, damn. I wonder, is that what would happen if one of the toys from Toy Story got beheaded or something like that? I wonder. Nah, actually on second thought I don't, because that's too fucking dark. Toy Story is my fucking childhood, and I don't need that ruined. But what did y'all think of this video? Leave your comments and opinions down below. That is it for this video, y'all. If you like my reaction, like the video, comment on the video, and share the video. And if you really liked it, subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out a lot. And tap that bell icon so you will be notified every time I drop new content, which I do on a weekly basis. That is all I got for y'all this time around. Your boy Steph is out.